Welcome to this week's A Story to Tell with me, Richard Beauvoisin. Had Sarah Curran in today from Cardiff Metropolitan University, and we spoke all about feet. Enjoy. Always has a really weird ending, doesn't it? But let's get the party started by Pink. Here till midday. It's Richard Beauvoisin here with you. Got a lovely guest today called Sarah Curran. She's a professor at Cardiff University, and can't wait to chat to her very shortly. I can see her now on the Zoom. She's looking very nice, so it's all good. Right, so that's going to be Sarah Curran. If you have any questions for us, all about feet today. So yeah, feet or knees. So give us a give us an email at studio@radiobath.com is the easiest way to do that. So yeah, she'll be coming up fairly shortly. Here is a bit of Stay by Shakespears Sister.
If this world is wearing thin and you're thinking
Now, I've already been corrected. It's not Cardiff University. Apparently, it's Cardiff Metropolitan University. So yeah, apologies to all of those people out there. So we have the lovely Sarah. Good morning, Sarah. Hopefully you can hear me.
Good morning, Richard.
There you go. You can hear me. Fantastic. It's always a strange thing with a Zoom one because you can't hear me until we go live. But there we go. So how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. So today is all going to be all about feet and knees, isn't it? So yeah.
It is indeed.
You don't sound like you're from Cardiff.
No, I'm not. I'm probably a little bit Wenglish. I've lived in Wales probably longer than I've lived in England, but I'm originally from Liverpool. I grew up near Bristol, and I went to university at Cardiff and went back to Bristol University for around about 18 months, and then I've been back in Cardiff ever since, really.
Wow. It's Cardiff's a fantastic city. It really is. I love going to Cardiff.
It is.
Do you know, I've been to the stadium a number of times, and what's great about the stadium is right in the centre, so you just kind of walk out, kind of showing something here, isn't it? You walk out the pub and straight into the stadium. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? We interview a lot of our students for our programme and programmes, actually, and it's one of the key features. We get in discussions with them and their parents and their partners, because Cardiff's quite a small city, but it's easy accessible as well. So I think that's one of the brilliant features of it.
Yeah, no, it's a great city. So you are a professor. So what are you a professor in? Tell us all about it.
Okay, so my actual title, my personal chair, is also known as is a Professor of Podiatric Medicine and Rehabilitation. So what that means is I'm a professor of lower limb, and rehabilitation relates to the mechanics and all the rehabilitation articles and my specialities, which I have done over the years. Okay,
and how did you get into it then?
Well, it probably goes back to my childhood. If any of my teachers are listening now, which I'm kind of like a little bit twitchy of, because obviously I did go to school round in the southwest area. I was probably not the brightest. I was very focused on sport. I love sport. Sport was my life, and I know my mum and dad are listening, and they'll reiterate that as well. And I played a range of sports, and I was particularly good at hockey. And unfortunately, I sustained quite a serious knee injury when I was about 14, 15, and I snapped one of my tendons in my knee, my patella tendon, my kneecap tendon. I had surgery on it. It didn't go quite well. I had loads of complications. I was in hospital for quite some time. I missed school for about 18 months, and I had to really learn to walk again. And run again, and got back into hockey. But I was really never the same player again. I lost a lot of my speed. I was a forward, and then I had to go back playing defence on a sweeper, and really that wasn't my skill set. I used to dribble the ball out the D, much to my coach's annoyance. And then I started having problems with my foot. The older I was getting, and I found I had what we call a tarsal coalition, which is the bar of bone growing between the heel bone and the talus bone, which is just underneath your shin bone of your ankle. And the only way around it was to get it fused. So I had it done once, but then it didn't work. I had to have it done again. But prior to that, I'd already started my podiatry degree. And I think really what happened when I was rehabilitating with my knee, I think that because I was having continued problems with it, I really had to think about my career, and I wanted to be quite active in a career, like be a PE teacher or something like that. And I was told by my surgeon, you need to really think about what you're doing. And I was quite inspired by all the allied health professions who were part of my rehab, but I knew I wasn't bright enough perhaps to be a medic and maybe savvy enough to be a physio, but I wanted to do something different, and I read around, and podiatry really caught my eye, and the opportunities I think the podiatry profession offered was just excellent, and it kind of like went on from there. And I think having a foot problem and a knee problem, it made me understand biomechanics, how we walk, a lot better. So that self-experience really truly has kind of like followed me right throughout my career.
So you're a professor at Cardiff Met University, I'll get it right this time.
Yeah.
I see when I was looking at this, like you're an honorary professor from Dublin though. How does that work?
I am, yeah. So it's a little bit more west than that. It's Galway, University of Galway in Ireland. So that all evolved around. So to become an honorary professor, you go through the same process. Again, you've got to have an international reputation, a national reputation, and profess to be, excel in areas which you should excel at. And I was Galway's external examiner for some years, and then I started once I finished my external examinership, they're an absolutely lovely team over there. I started teaching for them, so I started teaching sports medicine, and I used to each year go out and work with a team and do some lecturing for their students. So that's how it's evolved. And I've been an honorary prof there for quite some years as well.
And I know we were chatting a few days ago, and kind of you definitely feel inspired to do what you do because, as I say, you weren't necessarily looked upon as being that bright when you were younger. Is that true?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, again, I reiterate, my mum and dad are listening. I'm pretty stubborn, and I think when someone says I can't do anything, it kind of like makes me a little bit more determined. And I've kind of. I remember Einstein saying, you've got to have a good imagination to have creativity. And I think that was something which was elementary, kind of embedded in me slightly at school, because I quite like art as well, but I was never good enough to be arty. But it's having that creativity, and I think that has been the golden thread throughout my teaching career. I'm very privileged in the position I am in because I do teaching and I do research and I do clinic. So I get the best of a number of worlds, really. And to be an academic, I'm very proud to be an academic. It's served me well. It's taken me all across over the world. I've met many people who've inspired me themselves. Students inspire me. My patients inspire me. But yeah, it's just having that determination, I think, because you'll have more knockbacks than positives. And if I always say to students, my CV is reasonably quite long now, but if I put all my failures on my CV, it'll be 3 times as long. And it's learning is a journey. It's never an end product, and I've still got loads to learn as well. And I'm always open and honest with my students as well regarding that. I don't know everything. I won't confess to say I do know everything. It's and I think that's the beauty. I think that's the beauty of life as well.
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, I'm a dance teacher, and you have that moment of kind of feeling like you are the expert, and then you watch somebody doing something, think, I can't do that. It doesn't make you any less of a person or less of a teacher. You then just need to learn how to do that part. We're going to have a little break for some adverts in a second. We're going to talk about National Feet Week. But before we do that, I'll be honest with you, I've got distracted while we've been talking here. Okay, I'm going to be really honest here because Sarah's doing this via Zoom, and behind her chair she has the most amazing light, which I can't see fully. And it's like, that is... I'm trying... That's... What... Is it not Blockbuster? What was that programme?
It reminds you of the hexagon from Blockbuster, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a light. It's just like an LED light. I am meant to. I can change it on my app on my phone. It's not working. It was going to be lilac. It doesn't. I'm stuck on light blue at the moment.
So yeah, can I have a pee, please, Bob? That was always the moment from that, wasn't it? But yeah, it just looks like the little hexagons going down. So yeah, my little distracted mind definitely got distracted by that. But we're going to come back after the break with more about National Feet Week and Sarah. Many years ago, I could reach those notes. Not for a while, though. Right, we're back with Sarah then. So we're going to talk about National Feet Week, which I'll be honest with you, until I spoke to yourself, I didn't even know National Feet Week existed. Tell us about National Feet Week, Sarah.
Okay, so National Feet Week is running from Monday through to Sunday of this week, and it's really kind of like promoting and celebrating all good is what about feet, getting the public to recognise, I think, the importance of how our feet are and how they influence the rest of our body, really.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I think I was about 16 or so. Similar to yourself, I used to play a lot of sport. And yeah, I apparently broke my metatarsal in my foot. I didn't realise that. I strapped it up for a year and carried on playing football. And thought it hurts quite a lot, but I'll just carry on anyway. Eventually went to the hospital because it got quite painful. Cycled there and came out on crutches. So you kind of got to look after your feet, haven't you?
Definitely. It's that old notion, isn't it? You don't realise how important your feet are until something goes wrong with them. I mean, when we look at how our feet are, I mean, a quarter of our bones of our body are in our feet. We've got 26 bones in each foot. We've got 33 joints, 19 muscles, 10 tendons, and 107 ligaments. And we've got 3 arches, and they beautifully adapt, walking on uneven surfaces. They support the body. And it's just an amazing engineering concept.
They are. Now, we're going to talk footwear later on. As I say, I'm a dance teacher, play a lot of sports, so footwear for me is really quite important. But we're going to talk about the quality versus quantity of steps. Now, most people will know the classic of doing 10,000 steps a day. What does that mean?
Okay, so this has gained a lot of attention in the literature, and it's something I touch on with my undergrads and master's students in particular. And it's also something which I speak to a number of my patients about in terms of rehabilitation. So the 10,000 steps a day is kind of like a little bit of a false positive to a certain extent. It come about back prior to the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo, and it was because this company from Japan were designing this pedometer, and it was called 10,000 steps, and I think the original word was manakapiki or something like that. Apologies, I don't speak Japanese, and it kind of like stuck. And of course, you got all these products on the market now in terms of watches, and you can have traditional pedometers as well. You can get pedometers on your phone through apps, and it's kind of like stuck. But there has been a number of research papers out there actually saying, do we actually need 10,000 steps? And if you look on, if you happen to Google it, you'll come across quite a wide ranging feature of between 4,000 through to 18,000 steps a day. Of course, the fitter you are, the more active you are. If you've got more of a manual job, you're going to be hitting probably over that 10,000 steps a day. They do say between anything between around about 8,000 steps is good. And if I read a paper in a few months ago, and they were saying that the sweet spot for most people is around about 7K. You should be getting around 8 to 10 if you're under the age of 60. And around about 4 to 6 if you're over 60. But it depends on how mobile you are. Don't be governed by your age. Be governed by how provided you've got no health issues or anything like that. I mentioned I use the notion of steps per day in terms of my rehabilitation for some of my patients. patients. When the new year hits, I always used to get an influx of patients, typically around February time, middle of February, beginning of March. They set themselves a New Year's resolution in order to become fitter, eat healthier, and so forth. And they often used to come to me with shin pain and foot pain and knee pain because they've been overdoing it and they've been decided to run for charity or whatever they wanted to do to lose weight. And some people go into it quite heavily and they don't maybe plan out, and that can be quite problematic for them, particularly if they've not acclimatized their body to it, and or maybe they're not a runner, because you know as well as I do, Richard, you see people on, you know, like the London Marathon. Some people have got the ability to have a good running style. And there are people who are much more naturally good runners. Some people are naturally more good at dancing, or maybe a naturally good footballer or a rugby player, depending on a body type and so forth. Walking in decades gone by has perhaps been perceived as not being good enough to get that heart beating. But in actual fact, it is actually one of the better forms of exercise, which can increase your well-being, reduce obesity, which is a silent epidemic at the moment, really, which we're having across the world, not just in the UK, and engages people. I do walking. I go out walking the dog, and it helps me switch off. And it's really one of the key features I think I used as part of my rehabilitation for my patients. So we get them to walk 2,000 to 3,000 steps a day if they're rehabilitating from an injury, and we get them to increase it. Now, there are, as I said, there are modalities which you can use to record your steps. Don't get too governed by that, because I go off my steps. I always try and hit 10,000 steps. It's the guide, and I do get my knickers in a twist, so I don't quite hit my 10K every day. But you know what? Tomorrow's another day. So you kind of like just aim for that, and you look at the whole week or the whole month, because it's like anything, isn't it? Like a diet, it's consistency, and rehabilitation has to be consistent. And we often get asked, patients often ask us that, do I need to keep up with my exercises? And of course you do. It's about that sustainability and of effort, I suppose. And as we get older, strength and conditioning does become a lot more important. Being mobile has an effect on cartilage. You want, cartilage secretes synovial fluid. We know as we get older, synovial fluid decreases. So we need to be, mobile as much as we can. So, your synovial fluid, your cartilage is like a sponge, and it releases that synovial fluid to lubricate and act as nutrient. And if you're not using your joints, if you're not mobile, you're going to become stiffer.
Well, I always go back to a class which we once did, and we were doing an aerials class, and it was really quite a complex class, and there was a couple in there that were in their mid-80s, and myself and Zoe, my wife, we looked at me like, we know what we've got planned. How are they going to do this? And they were the best in the class by an absolute mile on that occasion, and they were exceptional. And I've always kind of used those as an example of age is just a number, and it's how mobile you are, as you say, to do it. Now, I played golf yesterday, first time in 6 months. I have to say I was shattered afterwards. It's quite a lot of walking in the end, up and down hills. But yeah, my steps yesterday were 24,500, including dancing. That's
impressive.
It's quite a lot. And, I spoke to the previous presenter, Gerald, and he said, how are you? And I went, I'm shattered. So, doing that amount. But yeah, I mean, I kind of keep kind of a track. But yeah, the previous day was just under 6,000. So I shouldn't get too disheartened about that then.
Definitely not, no. And I have to tell myself this and remind myself about it as well, because you need to look at the overall rather than focusing on one day. And I mean, how many steps would you do in a dance class?
That's a really good question, which it depends massively if you're a lead or if you're a follow. If you're a follow, then you would probably do 3 times the amount that a leader will do, because a leader quite often stands still and passes his partner forwards and backwards as a kind of general rule. So you'd often end up standing still much more as a leader. So, do you know, I'm dancing tonight. I'm going to measure it for you.
Well, I guess as well, it depends on what type of dance you're doing. If you're doing a jive, if you're doing a quick step, if you're doing a waltz, you've got different stride lengths as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're more kind of like salsa without the footwork, so it's much more kind of walking dance as much as anything else. So it is a lot of steps, but definitely from the follows perspective, you do many more steps than you do as a leader. I know if I dance 3 dances as a follow, I'm much more tired than if I'm a leader, because I've become efficient as a leader. That's how I like to say it. Some people say lazy, but I like to use the word efficient. So,
That's a really good point, actually, because what they're also saying as well is we're getting hung up over quantity of steps, and it's actually the quality. So we, as human beings, try to use the most efficient way of ambulating from going from A to B, and what happens is if you're going out for daily walks, you need to make your walks a little bit more challenging. So swing your arms. I mean, I've done labs, physiology labs, and where I've kind of like taped students' arms together and I've put oxygen masks on them to record their oxygen consumption and number of calories. And they're not as efficient when they're not using their arms, but when you do stride, you use energy as well. So be mindful of how you're actually walking. Some people walk with hand weights as well, if you can do that. But it is about the quality of walking. One thing which it does concern me, and I see it a lot when I'm out walking the dog. Some people are walking looking at their phone.
Yeah.
So they've got a flexed posture, their neck is flexed, so their gait style their walking style is not very fluent at all, and it's really quite concerning, because I mean, when you think of our everyday lives, particularly in lockdown, we were all sitting a lot more, and even though we were going out, we were not out, being as mobile as what we were in normal times, pardon the pun.
No, I mean, the only advantage of walking along with your phone, though, is it does remind me. So a picture came up today of myself and my father when we went to Twickenham 10 years ago. And it reminded me, I was in a coach, okay? And it was after the game, so we were all leaving. But obviously, as the coach leaving after the game, going very, very slowly, there was genuinely somebody walking along with their phone, and it was a group of RAF people in the coach, and they were looking at their phone, and they walked, I promise you, head first straight into a lamppost in front of a bus full of RAF blokes, and you've never heard such laughter in your entire life. No sympathy was involved whatsoever. So it does create some comedy moments, which is always quite good. Well, when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about footwear, because for me it's something I'm really keen to talk about. So have a quick break, and then we're back after that. Now, has anybody noticed the links that are going on here? This is Dancing Feet, Kygo featuring DNCE. Before the news, we had Jerry and the Pacemakers and You'll Never Walk Alone. I believe there's some Stilton going along with the cheese there. So it's Richard Beauvoisin here for you till 12 o'clock today. We have Sarah Curran from Cardiff Met University joining us for the second hour as well. Hello, Sarah. How's your cup of tea?
Oh, very nice, thank you. Very nice.
It's always important to get a cuppa over the news. It really is. So we're going to talk about footwear now, okay, which is very dear to my heart. Now, I know the classic thing you see is quite a lot is that you can have somebody that is wealthy or well-to-do buy an expensive pair of shoes that cost £100 that they have comfort for that lasts them 10 years, or you have somebody that's not so well-to-do buying 10 pairs of shoes that cost £10 and being in comfort. I don't think in comfort is a word, but let's go with it anyway. Okay. So what's your feeling about shoes?
Well, shoes have been around for quite a few years.
A couple of years now.
Centuries, 2 million years. And they've evolved. We wear them as a protective mechanism, really, because obviously the ground we walk on has debris on. I don't know about you, but I'm not too sure I'd like to go walking a dog and stand on little pebbles and little twigs. There'll be quite a few injuries. But there is a notion of why do we need shoes, and some people believe, I can remember listening to a podcast a few years back when I was on holiday, as you do, and it was one of the professors in America who I admire her work completely. She referred to footwear as being coffins, of putting your feet in coffin, in coffin boxes, and I thought that was a little bit exaggerated. I mean, working in podiatry, and if any pods or students are listening to this call today, is footwear is probably the most challenging aspect of our job in terms of education and trying to get patients to engage in what the most ideal footwear is. Now, we know that footwear has been worn for even if we go back to Egyptian times, they've worn shoes, they've worn moccasins as well. And there's been an argument to say, when did left and right actually get introduced? And we think it was around about the 1850s, 1854. They think the history on it is a little bit nebulous, really, trying to track it down. And that was because they just made the shoes from a straight last, effectively. And I've done work with the Mary Rose in Portsmouth, and I've looked at the footwear there, and you can actually see that the last was quite straight. But you can see how they wore them, that it naturally, because it was made often of cow's leather, the shoes would actually mould that lateral bowing, that outside bone as you get on the outer part of your feet. And it will mould to how you wear it as well. We need to make sure that the footwear we wear is got enough room in it. So there's enough room to wiggle your toes. There's enough depth as well. And particularly as we get older, our feet do become a little bit more stiffer. We tend to get more toe deformities, so hammer toes and clawing as well. And some people end up getting what we call bunions, which is French word for onion, effectively. But that's where your big toe drifts over, and that occupies more space. So you need more room. And this is where you say about the cheap and more costly shoes. The more costly a shoe is because maybe the material it's made from. So if it's soft leather, it will adapt to the shape of your foot, a little bit better than perhaps if you buy a cheaper shoe where it's made of different type of synthetic material, so it's less forgiving. I always say to some patients, and I do it myself, if I'm wearing a new pair of shoes, to wear two pairs of thin socks, so you've got that anti-friction if you're suffering from blisters. Now, you've mentioned, Richard, that you play football or have played football in the past. You still do?
Yeah.
So I've treated so many footballers in years gone by, and they are notorious for wearing their football boots pretty tight because they like to feel the ball when they're playing. And I do get that. But I used to have a number of players coming in with sometimes, obviously, Achilles tendinopathy, tendon problems, but often they'd have suffer with lots of blisters, and it used to kind of like curtail their training and what have you. So sometimes I just put a slightly small heel raise in both shoes, very small, just to lift them out a bit, just to stop it rubbing. So there are different things which you can do, but obviously not to offset your mechanics too much, because let's face it, when our footwear hurts, it can really knock how we walk. How we can walk to going to the shops and what have you. And I have to mention, you're obviously a dance teacher. Probably the biggest frustration, I think, for not just for me, for many pods, is high heels.
Right.
Now, there's been a multitude of studies done right across the world, in the UK, and I've done studies. I've done keynote lectures in Canada and also across the UK as well, and written articles on it. And saying about high heels. So if I said to you, which do you think is better, a wide heel or a stiletto heel?
Very good question. I mean, obviously, I wear them on a daily basis. Okay, so let me put that out there first of all. I'm regularly wearing high heels. But I suppose the only link I can go back to is I wore some Cuban heels once, and that really threw me quite a lot because they're about an inch high. Yeah. But I mean, I suppose you'd think a wider block heel would be better than a stiletto heel because it would give you more stability. That's my initial thought process. But I'm going to make a wild guess. Go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly, even as a biomechanics, person who's interested in this stuff is, so if we look at the knee, if we use the knee as an example, and the force is going on through the knee as we're walking. So if we're wearing a stiletto, the force is going through the knee around about 22% higher than it would be on a flat. Okay. And if you're wearing a wide heel, it's 26% forces, so slightly higher. Now, to be honest, I understand, and I thought a wide heel, you're increasing surface area, so it will be better. But effectively, the notion is all high. Some people say all high heels are bad, and I do sit in that camp. But if we end up saying to our patients, don't wear any high heels at all, then we will disconnect with our patient population. That's important. But there are certain heel heights you can kind of like communicate them with. Now, again, it's evidence-based in the literature. A heel of 1 to 4 centimetres is reasonably okay. Now, lots of our patients, or many of the public, will be wearing high heels on a daily basis, and they're very much used to it. problem is when you're wearing high heels, you are increased to falling downstairs or falling upstairs. So if you get home from work and you've had your high heels on all day, and you take them off and you run upstairs, you've got to adjust when you go back down again.
Yeah,
Particularly when you're going down too, because the actual heel height has changed. So often there's a lot of reports from A&E where people have actually fallen down the stairs when they've been barefoot, but they're notorious for wearing high heels. But if you look at the forefoot, if you're wearing something around about a 7.5 centimetre heel, the pressures on your knuckle area of your forefoot, so what we call the metatarsal area, the metatarsal phalangeal joint areas, that increases pressures by 75%. Wow. Which is high. That is massive.
Yeah.
If you go down to 5 centimetres, then you're talking around about it being around about 57%. And if you go down to 2.5, it's around about 22%.
So I'm thinking about the dancers. Yeah, I'm thinking about the dancers, and quite regularly that I'm going to go back to inches here for no good reason whatsoever, but it's in my head. So general dance shoes for the follows are about 1.5 inches. Is what we generally have, and they're quite a block heel as well, so it's actually the width of the heel itself is the standard dance shoes. And I remember Zoe, when we first competed in 2009, she didn't think they looked dainty enough for her, so she then wore 3-inch heels, and genuinely she was like Bambi on ice. She couldn't walk or dance in them in any way, shape or form. And after one round, which thankfully we got through, she went back to her normal heels and she was actually quite stable again. So I'm guessing stability, especially if you get older as well, with your natural stability is going to reduce. So I'm trying to think of, do I see many 80-year-olds wearing high heels?
We do get them coming into clinic, to be fair, where they've got that still slight heel, and we often have to educate them to say, look, you're on, there are 150 risk factors for falling anyway, and obviously, footwear is one of them, be it if it's higher heels or not. So the problem is as well we have, Rich, is the ballet pumps. They're also a big bugbear for us.
Oh, God, why is that then?
Going completely flat is not very good as well, because they've got no support, and we want the footwear. It's a bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, isn't it? We don't want the porridge too hot, we don't want it too cold, we want it to be a happy medium. And when you wear high heels and you wear them day in, day out, and many of our patients, many patients have come to see me where they've got knee pain, because when you wear high heels, you tend to flex your knee a little bit more, so that can increase pressure at the back of your kneecap. Your bum tends to stick out, which can be, for most people, aesthetically pleasing, but you're increasing the forces going through the bottom of your spine. Your Achilles tendon doesn't get stretched enough, so because your plantar flex, you're flexing your foot. So when you do go to wear flat shoes, you can't, because you're walking with a little bit, bit more bouncy, because you can't get your heel down because your Achilles is tightened up. You get toe pain, you get forefoot pain, and women are notorious as well for wearing shoes, particularly if they're wearing stilettos where there's no anchor strap. Yeah, it like sucks on. I've done it myself in years gone by, and it does like that sucking motion to try and put it on. And again, that has been reported that women wear too smaller shoe to fit. So if you're ever going out shopping for any footwear at all, I will say this to students: always encourage your patients to go at the end part of the day, because as we go through the day, our feet begin to swell a little bit more. So if you're going to go shopping, actually go during the day, at the end of the day.
So here's a personal question then, or a personal question from my perspective, okay? So I always believed right throughout my childhood and early adulthood that I was a size 10. Okay, I generally wear size 9 or 9.5 now. So do your feet shrink as you get older? Or do they stay the same? Because I definitely wear different ones now.
They can. I suppose if you put on a lot of weight, your feet generally tend to go flatter, and obviously we just don't put weight on our tummy or on our arms. We put on weight all over us. So you do lose a little bit of weight off your feet. It won't change the structure in essence. But I will say every company or every manufacturer will use different lasts. So how they devise their lasts, like the American companies, their lasts are, I believe, they're slightly smaller than the UK or European. Okay. So it's like if you buy clothes from different shops as well.
It's always the expensive clothes. It's always
try them on.
It's always the expensive clothes shops that you magically now a size 8, even though with the rest of them you're a size 10 or 12. So, so it might be a little bit of that.
Exactly. And we are governed by numbers, aren't we? And rather than by fit. And I suppose because we buy a lot of stuff off the internet now from our own home, which is good. We don't always. And you can try before you buy. But sometimes there's nothing more beats it maybe trying it on in the shop perhaps as well. But you can walk around in footwear at home anyway. Another we're coming to the summer now as well. I know it's still a bit chilly at the moment.
Doesn't look like it out there today.
I know. Well, we're in Wales, so obviously we've got wet feet. I think it always rains in Wales. But flip-flops is something many of our patients come in on sliders as well, and we really don't recommend them because they do expose your feet to damage or dropping stuff on. But in actual fact, you actually toe grip, and if you've got a pair of flip-flops on in the coming months, actually have a look at how your toes are gripping, because the anchorage to keep those flip-flops on are not so good. And it's an elegant reminder, actually. I said to some of the students, first years, a few weeks ago, do you really need toes to walk? And I kind of like they were going, oh, it made them think. And you do. Your toes serve a purpose for balance and the propulsive phase of walking. And I'm sure if you were dancing, if you didn't have your toes, you'd struggle to do your pivots and so forth.
Well, do you know what? Talking about toes and dancing has led me on to a whole different conversation, which we're going to have. We're going to have a little break for music. And I'm going to introduce you to one of my favourite dance phrases, which is paws claws. So we'll have a little break for music, and then we're going to come back and talk all about paws and claws. So here's Lewis Capaldi. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today.
I miss knowing what you're thinking and hearing how your day has been. Do you think you can tell me everything, darling, but leave out every part about him? Right now you're probably by the ocean, while I'm still out here in the rain. With every day that passes by since we've spoken,
I reckon if I gave you 20,000 guesses, you'd never guess who that was by. I love the track. I never knew who it was by, though. It's by Matthew Wilder. That was a request from Zoe, just to let her know. Give her a shout out as well. We've had a message in from the lovely Sarah, and she says she's been working on feet in her classes this week in honour of Foot Week. She is a Pilates teacher. So yeah, feet are really important. Now, before the break, I spoke about paws, claws. Welcome back, Sarah. Hopefully you're there.
Yeah, I am.
There we go. Good. Oh, there was that momentary delay. And I was like, oh, she's gone. But paws, claws. So I talk about this quite a lot regarding how you dance and how you use your feet when you're dancing. So if you imagine taking a step back, almost not quite doing a moonwalk, but taking a step back with your foot. And what most people do to start with anyway is they step back and they start on the ball of their foot and then go through onto the heel, and sometimes that's a bit clunky, and you kind of got the two parts then that matter. And what I talk to them about is trying to do what we call paws claws, and I compare it even to our little cat that we've got at home, and I imagine that they've got their paws out like that. I'm showing this on Zoom, by the way, to Sarah. Paws on like that, and then we have the claws that come out, and I try and treat the toes as claws, so therefore when they're rolling through their foot, they hit their toes first, then the ball of the foot, and then the heel, and that gives them an extra 33% connection to the floor. Now, question for yourself, is that a good idea?
Well, in terms of strengthening the toes, I think it's good, because one of the rehabilitation or some of the management approaches we use for a number of our patients, and particularly as we get older, is scrunching up a towel. Okay. So, sitting and standing and scrunching up a towel. So our like I said, our toes have joints in them. They have two interphalangeal joints, and they're meant to move. Joints are meant to move. If we don't move them, many people do begin to have problems as we get older. Or if you bang it, our toes are notorious for catching it on the bed and knocking it. And if we, fracture it, they don't generally tend to treat fractures of toes unless it's, gone through the skin. But in the more severe ones, you end up, losing that flexion. So it's not a bad thing, I think, if it's done in a controlled way. But it's part of the strengthening approaches we would do. We would get scrunching at the tail, which was, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and just kind of thinking of my wife's feet. She'll love me for talking about this on air. She really will. So my wife did ballet for about 20 years when she was a child, and she had the pleasure of going up on pointe, which no doubt you've seen some ballet dancers.
Yeah.
And the state of ballet dancers' feet, when they do it full-on professional, they are to be seen, to be believed. But her toes are almost at a 45-degree angle from all of her pointe work. And she's always said that she might need to have them all broken again to kind of straighten them back up. I don't think she's going down that route just yet, but that must be quite excruciating to have all your toes broken.
It's not something. She probably needs to talk to someone about that initially. I've seen a number of ballet dancers, and literally their forefoot was square. And the amount of callus and hard skin. I think what their feet go through is quite unbelievable. And the rotation in their hips is pretty impressive. It's also damaging to the limb.
I've just had clarification from my wife, who I've just found out is listening. Apparently it's just the big toe that's the problem, not the rest of them. So,
all right, okay.
literally live on air, she's like, it's not all of them. So just the big toe. But yeah, ballet dancers, they are going through absolute hell with their feet, going up on pointe. And I think what most people don't realise, they have literally got their toes going into a wooden block with virtually no support whatsoever.
And I think when you think about it, it is an extreme. It's a skill, isn't it? It's a skill set. It's it's like I wouldn't pirouette and go up on my toes to go and get the milk from the fridge.
Really?
And it's that learned. It's that learned response. We've got this thing called Wolff's law and Davis's law. So Wolff's law really relates to form follows function. So our bones will adapt accordingly if you keep on repeating a maneuver over a period of time. And Davis's law relates to soft tissue. Okay. So your tendons and ligaments will acclimatize and adapt accordingly. And that's what happens to the ballet dancers, and their structure probably will be damaged because certain ligaments have become shorter as well.
So moving on then to footwear, going back to that very quickly about athletes' footwear. So I know, for instance, when I play football, if it's a really muddy pitch, I'll put big studs in. If it's an AstroTurf, I'll just have my AstroTurf boots, which have some grip, but not too much grip. And again, for athletes, they have their spikes. Cricketers wear spikes. Golfers wear, what's your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, again, this is where I'm really privileged to do my job I do. I teach across a range of degrees, and I teach master's students on the sports exercise medicine masters, and also our own masters as well. And it's useful to get their take on it because I don't necessarily have a clinical background. But we've gone through phases, and I've done research in terms of football boots where people have worn the conical studs and also all blades. Now, blades were quite popular quite a number of years ago, and you wore blades, in the forefoot and the rear foot. But what they were finding is people were stopping on the wet grass and carrying on because they didn't have any stopping mechanism, and also they were going over on their ankle quite a bit too. So there's that blended approach now of blades and conical. I think the pitch is what rugby players and football players are playing on now. I think it caused more anterior cruciate ligament injuries in particular, and it's been quite problematic. Even with the cricketers, Joe Root, for example, he had an ACL injury, very innocuous, but it was probably his mechanism. I'm not saying it was because of the way his foot was. It can just, the ACL can just go. But footwear does contribute to it a lot. Golfers, now you played golf yesterday.
I did.
Well, if you play a 9-hole or an 18-hole, I played 18 holes in some, when it's taking me a lot longer because I lose the ball. But you can accumulate, quite a few steps. And if you've got golf shoes on, One company had a torsion bar a number of years ago, and it was really stiff. And often when I see patients, I get them to bring their golf shoes in if they're a golfer, particularly if they've got big toe joint problems, because if you're teeing off, or if you're using your pitching wedge or whatever, you've got to have that fluency in terms of your downswing and your follow through. And if you haven't got that rotation and the movement in your forefoot, it will affect the way you play. And also if you walk in uncomfortable golf shoes or golf trainers, whichever you may be wearing, it will cause more foot pain as well. And some of the studs are better. Okay, in the UK, we tend to be more wet, don't we? We tend to play on more wet grounds, particularly in the winter. So. And obviously the summer's a little bit different, so you maybe don't need as much grip, but the grip element is important. And sometimes I think we need to have asymmetric type of golf shoes in terms of when you're doing your not so much your putting, but if you're driving off, but that is what one of the issues I think, Richard, as well, is the companies for sport, they put a badge on it and they sell it. I remember being interviewed for X-Ray, BBC Wales X-Ray years ago about toning footwear, and having a workout in a shoe. Can you lose pounds by wearing this particularly unstable shoe? And it's not as simple as that. But of course, it's the marketing campaigns, I think, which these footwear companies absolutely do brilliantly at as well. And we went through a phase of running barefoot as well. I mean, it's gone about 10, 12 years ago now, and it all stimulated from a paper published in the Journal of Nature Science, which wasn't reviewed properly actually, but it was published by colleagues from Harvard University, and it was saying about if you run barefoot, you strike the ground with the forefoot, and decreases pressures in your knee and your foot a lot better. But if you and I can't run anyway very well, but if you were to run over, to go and get some milk or from Tesco, and I got you to run barefoot, you will probably not strike the ground initially with your heel, because you'll think, oh, that's going to really hurt, striking the ground on the heel. So you'll default to landing on your forefoot. But then after a few yards, you'll be thinking, I'm struggling, my calf's really hurting.
Yeah. So
we always think that running is where you can just go off and do it. And if you're going to change, your type of footwear, traditionally most runners are heel strikers anyway. And if you're a sprinter, you're going to be more of a forefoot striker. But if you want to change your running style, you have to do it over a period of time. And often when I used to see so many patients saying, I want to run better on my forefoot, and they were going to classes which paying a lot of money. And I used to say to them, just shorten your stride length and kind of like lift your knees a little bit to make you more efficient, because our walking is meant to be energy efficient, and our tendons store potential kinetic energy to rebound. I mean, kangaroos have got it in massive, they've got huge Achilles tendons and a big tail. They're really, really efficient, but we're not like them. So I think marketing campaigns for lots of footwear in the sporting world do it very cleverly as well, and you've got to be mindful. There's been a number of studies on how much should you pay for a pair of trainers. Should you get it from a store in town, or should you buy an expensive pair? Evidence actually indicates there is no difference. It's personal choice. They're just as good. Yeah. Trainers' footwear will always wear out. Trainers are made out of EVA, ethyl vinyl acetate. They begin to dry out, so they're not going to be as supportive. I remember when I was a kid, I always used to think I needed a new pair because they weren't as white as what they used to. But you actually look for creases in the trainers, and that's where the material is drying out and not being as supportive.
I wonder if whilst you're talking there, and I did this earlier when you talked about wiggling your toes in your shoes, I generally wiggled my toes in my shoes at that point. And I'm wondering now, those people that are wearing trainers are looking down, looking for creases, and I'm looking down at my own shoes thinking, oh, how are these shoes doing? So these still feel quite comfortable. I think they're all right. But yeah, we're talking about pitches earlier on, just very quickly, about, you've got the difference in pitches. Like I went to the London Stadium a couple of years ago, and it's a 4G pitch now. So it has still got live grass, but it's actually got quite a lot of artificial grass in there as well. Now, needless to say, that's for the professionals. If you're looking at your average Joe Bloggs, who's a Sunday morning footballer, those pitches aren't going to be quite in the same. So should they be wearing different footwear for those types of environments?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You've got to wear the right footwear for the right. It's like if it's pouring down with rain or if it's snowing, you wouldn't go out in flip-flops. Well, some people
Well,
probably would, but generally, you would dress according to to the conditions you're going to be doing. It's like if you want to go walk up a mountain, you probably wouldn't walk in flip flops. You'd walk, in hiking boots or a good pair of trainers. So if you're going to play Sunday morning football and it's the ground is pretty wet, then you would go for the longer studs to get more grip. Because otherwise you're going to be too unstable and you're going to increase your risk of getting injured.
Yeah, whereas if you were, I suppose, on the harder ground, then you'd want to almost go to AstroTurf boots. I suppose it would be that far extreme.
Yeah, definitely. And that obviously can happen during, a lot during the summer or pre-season training as well. So it's kind of like this is where your selection, your wardrobe selection of if you're a footballer, if you're a rugby player, you've got to have, all footballers have their own favourite football boot. I mean, I had my favourite hockey trainer in particular. I remember we went through a phase where when I was playing hockey and I got these new trainers and they had grips along the side. It was for helping take penalty corners. And they were quite expensive for that, time. And everyone was wearing them. And I went training and we got told to shave them all off the side because there were reports people were getting them caught and going over on their ankle. Right. So manufacturers design these products with good intention to increase performance, but in actual fact, they induce more injury in the long run.
And are you aware that hockey has influenced football? Are you aware of that in any way, shape or form?
No, I wasn't.
So hockey has massively influenced football. It may be subconscious, who knows? But I remember playing hockey, and I used to play reasonable level myself. And they used to talk about it at the back. They were like, I cannot imagine why footballers are just giving the ball away. You play out from the back and you keep hold of the ball. And this is 30 plus years ago that I used to play hockey quite regularly. And back then, that was kind of the norm. It's like, it's just absolutely crazy that you would even attempt to do a 50-yard ball, shot or pass, because it's just not going to come off. And they couldn't understand why footballers did that. And here we are 30 years later, and now football is basically played the same way as hockey.
Right, yeah, I get what you mean now, yeah.
So they play the ball out from the back. They literally have two people at the back in the 6-yard box, play short balls, and the whole game is just a completely different game than it was 20 years ago. So hockey has influenced football. Well, we're going to have a little break again for music and for the adverts. When we come back, we're almost at the quick fire round. I love the quick fire rounds. We'll be back after this. Thought I'd play that one for my dad. He's a big Rolling Stones fan. If you missed last week, by the way, they're all available on my podcast to listen to again. I did the A to Z of music last week. And so if you go to Life Off the Stage on any good podcast provider, then you can listen back to any of the interviews that I've done on Radio Bath over the last few months as well. But last week was the A to Z of music, which is quite good fun as well. Right, we're back with our last little part with Sarah, then Sarah Curran from Cardiff Met University. She's a professor of podiatry. I've been desperately trying to say that correct all week. I really have been practicing and everything. I really have. So we're on to your quick fire round, which, as people know that are regular listeners, they don't get the option of knowing what these questions are. It's always quite scary. So, but the first one's always the same. So, Sarah, what is your favourite ice cream?
Well, I'll have to be boring and go for vanilla.
Vanilla's been quite a popular choice.
There we are.
Is it a good quality vanilla?
Of course. Yes. It's about quality, isn't it?
I had the pleasure, we had some left over in the freezer the other day of some Neapolitan, is it Neapolitan? Ice cream, which has all the three. And for me, all three taste horrible together. They're just terrible. I love chocolate ice cream. I love vanilla ice cream. I don't like strawberry ice cream. But yeah, they all kind of intermingle. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Are you tidy or messy?
I'd probably say tidy.
It looks very tidy where you are. I don't know if it's Zoom tidy or not, but...
Yeah, no, I'd say it's reason. Yeah, I'm pretty tidy until you open a drawer, maybe.
Excluding social media and messaging services or anything like that, do you have a favourite game on your phone that you wiled the time away with?
Ooh.
You're now looking at your phone, aren't you?
It used to be football FIFA,
oh, really?
But I don't do that anymore, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's the most different answer we've had so far. which is nice.
Oh, there we are.
There you go. Was it any good on the phone? I've never played on the phone.
Yeah, not too bad. There was also this goal shoot thing as well. How many times you can get a goal in, and the more you got, the more the goalkeeper moved, and you come further away from the football pitch.
Okay.
From the goal. Sorry, yeah. So I used to get quite enthralled in that, but it was too addictive.
It is a trouble, isn't it? You get a new game on your phone, and then it's like all of a sudden an hour's gone. You think, just think what I could have done with that hour.
I know. It's bad. I think that's why I subconsciously got rid of it, really.
Not a bad thing to do. Do you make your bed in the morning?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, completely.
Why do you make your bed in the morning? Why? Yeah.
I was going to say it'll make me not go back in it again, but that's not the reason. It's just ready for the day. I don't like the bed, left how I got up. No, it's got to be tidy.
That is the right thing to do. What is your favourite breakfast?
I would have to say poached egg on toast with a bit of avocado.
Bit of avocado as well. I never understand avocado. Never mind. If you had to, what would be your favourite, or what would be your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, good grief!
Yeah.
You stumped me now. Do you know what? I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's okay. You don't have to have one. So you obviously haven't done karaoke then.
No, I think that's why, to be honest, Richard. Yeah. I'd never pierced people's ears by trying to sing.
So you're not a singer then?
Oh God, no, far from it. I'm not really a dancer either.
I always like to use the word yet. Anyone can dance. Yeah. So anyone can dance. I ask this question purely because, we do quite a lot of binge watching of TV programs, and, it's good to know what good ones are out there. So what's your favourite TV program?
Oh, to be honest, I don't really have fundamentally a TV program. I love Christmas films. And if you ever turn my telly on, I've either got Sky Sports on or another sport channel. There's always a sport channel on.
So what would be your favorite? What's your favorite sport to watch then? Because I know for certain things, I love cricket. I love football. I love rugby and a variety of different things. There are some sports like golf, for instance. Unless it's the Ryder Cup, it is the dullest thing to watch on TV. So what's your favorite sports then to watch?
It's nipping it between rugby and football, to be honest. I like watching hockey. I'll watch cricket. I'll watch tennis. I'll watch golf. It depends what mood I'm in. Yeah. If I'm marking, I might have I'll have the cricket or the golf on. Or if Liverpool are playing, I probably might not be marking.
No,
it depends on how well they're doing.
It's quite difficult to watch football and mark at the same time. But cricket,
I've got two eyes in the top of my head. Another two eyes.
Fair enough. And your last question then for Sarah is, if you came back in your next life as an animal, which one would you be and why?
I'd have to say an elephant, because I think they're very clever.
We haven't had an elephant yet, which is very good. Now, very sadly, I did a Can You Guess the Animal with my 7-year-old daughter the other day, and I started doing a variety of different shapes. She got all of them. Apparently, I was really good at this. So an elephant was one of them. I just did a trunk with my arm. I'll be honest, it wasn't high quality entertainment for her, but it passed 2 minutes of life. It really did. But Sarah, thank you so much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and I hope you've enjoyed it too.
I really have. It's been good. The music has been fab. So, but thank you for having me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned a lot myself. So it's been absolutely brilliant. And if we want to catch up on this again, then as I say, this will be available as a podcast on Life Off the Stage. Look at any of your natural podcast providers. We'll also pop a link out on Facebook as well. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And you. Bye bye.